Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second solo episode of Breaking Through, the Ellina Abovian podcast. This episode is coming out on my birthday, and it's my 39th birthday. And I chose to do this episode where I talk about how I started in news. It's a question I get asked all the time. And I've done several keynote speaking appearances where I've talked about my story and how I got started. And I thought it was almost perfect timing to reflect back to that time in my early 20s compared to now in my late 30s, where so much has changed, and I've changed, yet so much is the same. It's like when I look back on that time, who I was and what I was trying to achieve, the parallels are uncanny in the sense that I was in a place in my life where I was trying to go after a dream, something that felt very out of reach, yet at the same time destined for me. It's like a very delicate balance, right? Of believing in something, but almost being afraid to believe in it and being afraid to go after it. But something inside you feels called to do it. And that's how I felt. It was a moment rather, in my life where I was faced with two roads. I was either going to stay in Los Angeles and live the status quo of whatever my status quo was going to be at the time, or I was going to choose the road less traveled and pursue something that I felt was my higher calling or my next chapter in life. And so how I got started in news, as you guys might know, if you've listened to any of my earlier podcasts, I set out to do something totally different when I was younger. I did theater. It was something I was really passionate about. I wanted to be a performer, and I didn't pursue it all the way professionally. I stopped at 21 because I decided it just wasn't for me, or at least I was influenced to believe that it wasn't for me. Nonetheless, it was something that I came to terms with. I made peace with it. And I thought, what's a grown-up version of performing? Okay. And I was always interested in broadcast journalism as well because it allowed me to be on television. And I always wanted to be on television. I always wanted to work in television. Given the era or the generation I grew up in, TV was like the main form of broadcasting and connecting with people. And so it was something that I always felt really called towards. And I was just very intrigued by the anchors on TV. I thought they were so glamorous and beautiful and well-spoken and poised, and they did something that really contributed to society. And they were viewed as smart, intelligent, and I really wanted to embody all of these things from a very young age. And it was in the back of my mind. I thought, maybe that's something I can pursue. So when it came down to it in my early 20s and I decided that I would pursue journalism, I took about a year off of school. I had gotten my AA from Glendale Community College. And then I took about a year off to really decide what I wanted to do, what branch of journalism to go into. So I interned at a magazine, LA Today, for about a year. And that was a cool experience, but ultimately, it wasn't what I wanted to do because I still felt very called to do something in television. So I got accepted to Cal State LA into their journalism department. And this is something I definitely recommend to anyone who is considering broadcast journalism, is to specifically focus on a school that has a broadcast journalism department, because it's going to allow you to get that on-camera experience, editing experience, production experience, in addition to just basics journalism 101. And so Cal State LA was a great experience for me because I got to really do all of that and really learn what it was going to be like to work as a multimedia journalist. And 15 years ago when I got started, everyone started as a multimedia journalist. This is at a time where television stations were starting to cut back on budgeting. TV was no longer in its heyday because now you have social media, you have the internet, and all these emerging platforms. So TV kind of took a back seat a little bit. And I started to feel that when I started 15 years ago. So it was really imperative for me to know how to shoot, write, edit, in addition to being in front of the camera. So I was dealt with the very hard decision of how do I now get started in news? Because news, the way that it works is there are 200 markets throughout the United States, and it's divided into population size and also demographics and viewership. So let's say Los Angeles is number 2 because it is considered the second largest market in the country. And it's not just Los Angeles, it's Southern California, but it falls into the LA market. That's what we call it. New York is number 1. And the last on the list is probably like Greenville, Mississippi. And that's usually where new journalists start. They go to small markets where they are going to essentially do like a residency. And in a way, it's like grad school. We learn how to do the job. This is where you make your mistakes. This is where you can mess up on TV. This is where you can say things like, you know, things that might get you in trouble here in the big leagues where you can never recover. So I didn't want to obviously move to Greenville, Mississippi. I'm an LA girl. I grew up here. I'm used to a big city lifestyle. I'm Armenian. I come from a family and a background that doesn't necessarily promote for a young woman in her early 20s to move to a different state, especially a small town, which may or may not be the safest place to live. Okay, so Yuma, Arizona was one of the places that I was considering going to. So it was a very intimidating decision to leave Los Angeles, but it's something I felt that I just had to do. And I didn't come to that decision easily. A lot of life factors played into that, which almost made the decision unavoidable. And I'll get into that. So right around this time, and this is going to reveal the story of the woman with the black hair. I've talked about this before if you've ever come to like a speaking engagement or something that I've done. It's a really cool story. And it's a story that I hold near and dear to my heart because I think that it reflects so much of destiny and believing in ourselves. So around this time, my mom and my brother, they had a beauty salon in downtown Los Angeles. And when it was opening, they decided to invite all the local businesses to set up shops, just sort of like a vendor meetup, and invite people who live in the area. And a woman by the name of Michelle Costello, who till this day is sort of like my medium, she read my palm. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but I just thought, okay, this could be fun. So she read my palm and she said, "You are going to do what you're meant to do in this world, and a woman with black hair is going to open the door for you." I'm thinking, okay, who's this woman? How do I find her? And how is she going to open the door for me? Because news, kind of like entertainment, is an industry where it takes a lot of luck. You know, you can be amazing, but if you're not what a news director is looking for, you might never get that big break. So I just thought, all right, there's got to be this woman with the black hair. Maybe she's a news director. Maybe she's a casting agent. Maybe she's an agent herself or the general manager of a station, a network. I don't know. But I just know that I have to find this woman with the black hair. It just like was in the back of my mind. So long story short, I again am at this place in my life where I don't know if I want to leave Los Angeles. It's really hard. I'm engaged at the time and I'm in my early 20s. I want to say maybe 24 years old. And I'm planning my wedding to my fiance at the time. And for various reasons, our wedding gets canceled. And it had nothing to do with our relationship. We still were a really good couple. It was more logistic reasons. And I decided at this time that regardless of what happens with my marriage, my future wedding, I'm not going to focus on this right now because maybe the universe is trying to send me a message to focus on myself. And that's kind of what I did. I said to myself, I'm going to make a resume, a reel, which was, I'm not kidding, guys, absolutely awful. It was horrible. It was just like the crappiest thing you've ever seen in your life, but it's all I had. So I sent it out to a bunch of agents all over the country because I thought it might be nice to get an agent who would help me get my foot in the door. A woman by the name of Carolyn Kane from Colorado called me back, and she and I had a great rapport, and I signed with her. So she sent me on a few interviews, met with a couple stations, and no bites. Everyone kept telling me, you don't have enough experience, you're way too green, you need to go to a smaller market. My goal was to stay in California and to hopefully work either in Palm Springs, which I believe is like a 150 market, or maybe go to, I don't know, Vegas or somewhere like that. That's kind of a smaller town than LA, but not too far so that I could still stay close to my fiance, to my family, to my friends, because it's really hard to move away from a life that you are so attached to. And so as Carolyn is submitting my resume to different places, I get a call from a station in San Luis Obispo. And a man by the name of Doug Barden, who's the news director, invited me to the first interview. And I remember, thinking, this is great. It's San Luis Obispo. It's 2 hours from LA, just north on the 101 freeway. I can drive back and forth on weekends. It all seemed to align. And all I have to do right now is find the woman with the black hair somewhere in this office and, nail the interview. So I did the interview, and the same thing. He said to me, "You're too green. You don't have enough experience. We're probably not going to hire you." So I leave super disappointed, thinking, when am I going to get my big break? What is it going to take? So I go back to the campus at Cal State LA and I start shooting more stand-ups of myself. I kind of just detached from the possibility that this interview was going to turn into a job. I just surrendered to it. And I have the camera. I remember it was on me and it was super blown out in the background because I'm shooting it myself and I'm not an experienced shooter. So I don't even know how to balance the lighting or the exposure. And I keep thinking, if I look pretty enough or do this, then, maybe it'll get someone's attention. And in that moment, I get a phone call and it's Doug, the news director for the station in San Luis Obispo. It was an NBC affiliate. And he said, "Ellina, even though you don't have any experience, I believe in you. I think you're really smart and I want you to get started." I can't tell you guys the joy and excitement I felt in this moment because it was like my first big break. And wrapped up my camera, went home to tell my family, to tell my fiance, I got the job. So now I just have to move to San Luis Obispo. And that's exactly what I did. I packed up my car. My mom and I, went back and forth a few times. My fiance and I went back and forth a few times to find an apartment in San Luis Obispo, which was so tough because it's an expensive town. And I was offered a job with a $12 an hour salary. I'm not kidding. News does not pay a lot in the beginning and in the early years. So I had to really figure out how I'm going to make this work. But I was just determined. And it was a really scary situation to leave Los Angeles on a whim. And you don't know where you're going to come back to. Is this going to put a strain on my relationship? Is it going to put a strain on my friendships? Family dynamic? What are people going to think? All of that is going through my mind. I'm just 24 years old, so I don't have that confidence or certainty to really go out into the world with this idea that it's all going to work out. So it was a lot of anxiety. And I remember at the time, I wore this cross. And every time I would feel anxious, and anxiety is something I still deal with, I would just hold the cross and I would just say, it's going to be fine because I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I just kept looking forward and I kept telling myself, what's the alternative? If you don't do this, what's the alternative? You can stay in Los Angeles and you can go get a job that is maybe similar to news, like PR, communications, whatever, but it's not going to be what you want to do. And because I already gave up acting and I gave up other things in my life that I wanted to do, I thought, I'm not giving this up. This is as close to a responsible job, yet at the same time feeds my passion, feeds my creativity. I have to do this. I have to do it. So that's what I did. I got an apartment in San Luis Obispo. The only catch was I wasn't hired as a staff employee. I was hired as a freelancer. So I really had to make the most out of my time there. And that's exactly what I did. I had no friends. I had a tiny little apartment. I remember the first night there, I almost cried myself to sleep because I was so nervous to be on my own. I had never been on my own before in my life. And it's this tiny apartment. It's cold. It's, not fancy. And it almost feels like a dormitory, but it is my life in this moment. And I really was being tested. And it was the worst of times, but the best of times, because I feel I really got to understand what I'm made of. And I truly recommend that for anyone who is thinking to take a chance. Sometimes learning to swim is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. Because there will be moments where you're riding high on that wave. There will be moments where it's totally flat. But the beauty in all of it is you will learn that you can endure whatever it is. And It's different for all of us. We're all given different tests and different challenges, different circumstances to see how well we can show up. So that was mine. That was the first one. And so what did I do? I spent 3 months just really learning the craft in San Luis Obispo. I went to the news director after a few months and I said, okay, I've been here now. I can do the job. I think I've proven myself to you. Will you give me a contract? Because I need a few years here to really get that experience to one day go to the bigger market, the next market, to one day get back to Los Angeles. And he looked me in the face and said, absolutely not. We're not hiring you. We will give this job to someone who has more experience. I don't think you're fit for this role. That was hard. But I didn't give up. I went back home and I pulled up my laptop and I started looking up jobs in surrounding cities. And I found a position in Fresno for a photographer. I drove across the state from the Central Coast to the Central Valley, and I met with the news director and I convinced him. I said, I'm very determined. I will do whatever it takes. If you need a photographer, I will be a photographer. Just please also give me the chance to report. And at the time I had made like an updated resume tape, which reflected my work in San Luis Obispo. Again, I was faking it till I make it. I still was not an experienced reporter. I just wanted the chance. And I knew that if I didn't try for that next step, I was going to have to go back home to LA. And I didn't want to do that. I already had a taste of this industry and a taste of this life, and I wanted more of it. Also, everything in my personal life back home in LA was so uncertain. This was the only thing in my life that gave me certainty, even though the career in itself was uncertain. I just felt if I just stick with this, it will work out. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, where's this woman with the black hair? She's clearly not the news director, clearly not someone who works in the back office somewhere. No one, on air, the talent, the woman with the black hair does not exist here either. So I started in Fresno, and taking this job was probably the biggest test of my career. And I almost didn't know what I was signing up for. I was given a 50-pound camera. I was the weekend photographer going from one crime scene to a shooting on the freeway to a fire in, the mountains somewhere, and then driving out to the farm to do like this theft story about copper wire, and then coming back to the station all in one day, turning a package, getting ready, going live for the 10 o'clock show. I was crying by the end of the day because my back was spent. My eyes were tired. I was driving a minivan that smelled of smoke that's been in like 19 different fires. It was a miserable time, but also a time where I was learning a lot. So it's like you're constantly being pulled in two different directions, but I stuck with it. And I remember calling my mom and just being in complete tears, saying, I don't know how I'm going to continue with this because I have no friends here. I'm making $32,000 a year. I have no extra money to be shopping, going out, traveling to make myself feel better about this job. But yet I'm learning and I'm getting better at my craft every single day. It was a weird space to be in, but I stuck with it. And I figured if I can just stay here for a few years and really get that experience, really learn how to be a reporter. And Fresno taught me so much. Even though I was doing a lot of different things and wearing a lot of different hats, Fresno gave me the ability to really learn how to be a hard news reporter, because knowing how to do crime is so important in our industry, because if it bleeds, it leads. That's like the basic principle of news. You have to know how to do tough stories. And that's what Fresno taught me. After about a year and a half, I started thinking, okay, what's next for me? Where am I going to go to get closer to Los Angeles? And I had my sights set on either San Francisco or San Diego. So now, having met with almost every single news director in San Diego at different stations, 4 or 5 different stations, I finally get a call from Rich Goldner, who is the news director at Fox 5 San Diego, to meet him for a reporter job that's also MMJ. So I was also going to be shooting, editing, writing, going on camera, in addition to being a reporter. I figured it's fine. Let me do it. It's one step closer to LA because San Diego is a top 30 market. I believe it's even top 25. So at this point, I feel like I'm climbing the ladder. I'm getting closer to LA. It's a 2-hour drive south of Los Angeles. So it's all kind of aligning. And now at this point, I'm like 3 years into my career outside of LA and 3 years out of LA at this point. So I've gotten used to living alone. I've gotten used to being in the unknown. And here is this amazing opportunity where things are starting to finally align. I get a job, I get an apartment rather, close to La Jolla. And I'm walking on the beach every day after work. I meet incredible people in San Diego. So now I have a friend group there and I'm making a little bit more money. So life does feel like it's moving in the right direction. I was also married at the time. My husband was living in Los Angeles and I was living in San Diego, but we were commuting and seeing each other on the weekends. And it was great. It was honestly one of the greatest experiences of my life. I fell in love with San Diego. It's a small town, but also a big town, and just had all the components to make me feel like my hard work is starting to pay off. So almost 2 years into San Diego, I'm starting to see how I can make the transition to Los Angeles, because this was a seed that was planted in my mind almost the day I started. Fox 5 San Diego is owned by the same company as KTLA. It's now Nexstar Media, but back then it was Tribune. So I thought if I can just get in front of the news director somehow in Los Angeles, maybe they'll see me. Maybe I can apply for the job when my contract here is up. It was just something I was thinking about. And so I started doing some stories about the Armenian genocide while I was in San Diego, because I figured it might help me get on their radar somehow. And I didn't know if that strategy would work. I just did it. And so a couple times I ended up doing live shots for Los Angeles for KTLA based on stories in San Diego. And when you're a sister station and you're affiliated in that way, you have that ability to have access across different stations. So I was getting a little bit of that exposure. However, I didn't think that would be enough to, get me that next job. It's just little things I was doing because I felt like this is the way to get myself through the door. Long story short, I'm getting close to the end of my contract in San Diego, working on my resume tape, thinking about where I'm going to apply, whether it's ABC7 or NBC or Fox or whatever, or even KTLA. Totally to my surprise, a man by the name of Don Corsini, who at the time was the general manager overseeing both KTLA and Fox 5 San Diego. My boss, Rich Goldner, who I've always had an excellent rapport with, very friendly, an amazing human being. He comes to my desk, and I will always remember this day. He says, "Don is here, and he wants to see you." What do you mean? Why does Don want to see me? And I said, okay, when? In an hour? Great. Let me get my work done. I'm shaking. I go to the bathroom. I call my husband. I'm like, Don wants to see me. What do you think this is for? Do you think it could possibly be like what I want it to be? I don't want to get too excited. It's still a long shot. It's very out of my reach, but it's a possibility. So an hour passes. I go to Rich's office and we're walking upstairs to Don's office, and Rich stops me on the way in the hallway and he says, "Are you ready for this?" And I look at him and I'm like, "Ready for what? What are you talking about?" And he says, "Are you ready for this?" My heart just drops to my knees. So we walk into Don's office, and Don, exactly like the name, is this larger than life, old school, charismatic man who has essentially made the careers of some of the biggest anchors in Los Angeles. He is the Don of LA News. He is now retired, but he is a man I owe so much to. We approach his desk. It's very intimidating, very nerve-wracking. My neck is my heart is, anyway, it's all over the place. Just like I can't talk now, I couldn't talk in that moment. I was so nervous. And I go to sit down. Don looks at me and he says, "We've been watching your work over the last few years, and we think you're doing a great job, and we want to invite you to work at KTLA." In that moment, you guys, I just felt, I almost didn't believe him. And he's like, "Aren't you more excited?" And my response was, "Well, I don't know if I can believe you, because I have given up everything in my life over the last 4 years to live alone, to struggle, to be unsure, to question everything in my life for this career, to one day work in Los Angeles as a reporter, my dream, and you're just offering it to me? You mean I don't even have to apply for the job? You're just giving it to me? It felt like this is it. This is the moment where miracles are made of. This is the moment where dreams come true, and it can happen in an instant. But it wasn't because it happened in an instant. It's because I worked for it for 4 years. I worked for it in all the moments of not giving up, all the moments where I was crying myself to sleep at night because I was so alone and so unsure of where my life was going to end up. That moment just solidified it. And it happened so quickly and so effortlessly and easily, where I looked at Rich and I said, is he serious? Is this really happening? I get to go home. I get to go home to my family. I get to go home to my husband. I get to make a lot more money, all these things. And it really was that moment. And I will never forget it because it solidified to me that hard work does pay off. Believing in yourself does pay off. So I wrap up that meeting, and now I have to go to Los Angeles to meet with Jason Ball, the news director at KTLA, and just talk about some of the logistics, the contract, the pay, anything that he wants to prepare me for. So as I'm sitting down with Jason in his office, he says, one of the reasons why we decided to hire you is because you're Armenian. And that was a surprise, a pleasant one, because all this time I'm thinking, do I need to change my last name to fit into this industry? Do I need to be less Armenian, more Americanized? I don't have an accent, but I certainly do represent my community. So it was incredible to hear that they want me to fit into this role. And he said, one of the things I want you to do is to change your look a little bit, try to look a little bit more Armenian. Because here's an American man who, really just understands the Kardashians as an Armenian. So he's thinking like dark features and dark hair and all this stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, I guess I got to look more Armenian, because at the time I had longer hair, blonde, coming from San Diego. That was not an issue. But it didn't matter. At this point, I'm so excited to get my job at KTLA. I will do whatever this man says. So I moved to Los Angeles, back home. It's an incredible time in my life. It's like everything is finally worked out. And I have this photo of myself where it's this vision in my mind. And so it's my first day in 2015, July. I am about to go into work for the first time in Los Angeles for KTLA. And I'm looking in the mirror, and the person looking back at me is not only someone who is 4 years older, she's someone who's kind of been through the ringer. But the person looking back at me is a woman who has short, black hair. And this is because my news director wanted me to look more Armenian, wanted me to look more ethnic. And in that moment, I thought, the woman with the black hair who I spent 4 years, 5 years looking for is me. I didn't have to find her. I had to become her. And it was this profound realization at the time that really encompassed everything I was working toward at the time. I had to learn to believe in myself. I had to learn to trust myself. I had to learn that I'm the only one who's going to open the door for me. It's not this magic person. It's not a shortcut. I have to go take the long road. I have to work hard. I have to go through all the steps and all the challenges and all the tests. But what I'm going to come back to is me. It's just going to be a different version of me. The woman with the black hair was always me. I didn't have to find her in the back office somewhere. I didn't have to find her. She didn't have to find me. It was always in me. I was that person. But it took years of challenges to become that person. And I think about that now, and it's something I'm reminded of constantly, because I often find that we are always looking for inspiration, motivation, someone who's going to open the door for us, give us the opportunity, when in reality, it's just us. We are the only ones standing in our way. We are the only ones setting limited beliefs for ourselves. We are the only ones convincing ourselves and talking ourselves out of situations because we are controlled by fear or insecurity or doubt. And I'm here to tell you, don't do that. Get out of your own way, because the person you are looking to become is already within you. It's going to take time. It's going to take sacrifice and practice and determination, all of that. Whatever challenge and test you are meant to go through for your own path and your own journey, go through it. I promise you it's worth it. I came back to Los Angeles as a woman who had this foundation for her career, something I never had before. I wasn't necessarily the greatest student in school. I'm someone who gave up on different things in life. I'm someone who gave up on myself in life, but I put myself through the challenges and I came out as this person who I now know can figure it out. And that lesson is something I carry with me now every single day. I'm now 39 years old. I've been in news for 15 years, and I'm faced with a whole new door, a whole new set of challenges that I now have to walk through. But because I know I did it back then, I can do it now. Because I know I found the path back then, I'll find it again now. It's always in us. Always. You just have to believe in yourself. It's not easy. I know we are faced with so many challenges all the time. Cultural pressures, societal pressures, all the things that are meant to suck us into this vortex of insecurity and negativity. Just believe in yourself, guys. It's a simple idea, but it's all I can leave you with. On this day where I'm turning 39 and, I'm going into a new chapter and soon we'll go into my 40s and it's a whole new world of uncertainty. I am choosing to believe in myself and I am choosing to approach life with the same wonder and acceptance that there will be challenges along the way, but I'll figure it out. And I know you'll figure it out because that's where life and magic and beauty, it all lies on the other side of just pushing through and breaking through. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Breaking Through with Ellina Abovian. For our community to grow, please like and share, and also leave a review on this episode. Of course, you can find me on social media and let me know what you'd like to talk about in future episodes. Nothing is off limits, so let's have some fun.